Florida Citrus Hall of Fame has two missions, and one mission is to recognize people that have made significant contributions to the industry, and they're inducted and so forth. But the second mission is to tell the story of Florida citrus. And one way that we do that is oral histories like this. And so we're making this for the Florida Citrus Hall of Fame. I'm piggybacking on it because I'm doing Lake County. And so the first thing that we do is we have to make sure that Gus doesn't get confused. And so I do this. I say John Jackson, John Jackson. This is my friend
Glen Tyre, Tyre.
And
Dick Holloway.
Spell it. Holloway.
Holloway.
Okay. Now he won't get confused. So now what we want to do is we want to just talk about what it was like growing up in the citrus business, especially Leesburg. I'm doing a little bit of research, and it's pretty obvious that Leesburg was the heart of the citrus industry in Lake County for years and years. And Leesburg was kind of unique in that not only was it citrus, but it was big watermelon country as well too. So you kind of had these two dynamic agricultural industries. So the first thing I want to do is I want Dick to tell me what it was like as a young man growing up in Leesburg in the citrus business and your family and so forth.
Well, years ago I was interviewed by a newspaper, I think from the Villages, when I did some water work in my farm, and they asked me that same question. And I simplified it by saying, I feel like, and all my life it felt like, growing up in Leesburg was just like being in heaven.
Now, you're far enough away that you don't remember those hours on the end of a hoe in a grove or those hours in a packing house. People tell me that they were building character when they did that.
I not only remember that very, very vividly, and I can take you several groves that would almost point out the trees. And pruning was our big thing in the summertime. And there was some summer vacation, but when you were in town, my father saw to it that I pruned orange trees. And at one point during high school and early college, I guess, we had a little crew of my friends, and we'd go to these groves and prune all day. I don't know whether you ever worked with us or not.
Oh, I didn't work with you, but I've done.
You know what I'm talking about. And people think this is hot. This isn't hot. Hot is when you're in an orange tree covered with musk and all the odors and sweat and working there for 8 hours a day. That's hot.
And they don't do prune like they did then, but
don't do it at all. In
the summer, all the harvesting crews and anybody else they could get would prune out all the dead wood in the inside of the tree because dead wood was the host for melanose, which got on the fruit. Right. So they pruned the trees to do that.
And we thought the fungus was a big bad thing. I don't know whether the current things they spray trees with is curing that or whether it just didn't ever exist as badly as we thought it did.
It almost seems that over time the diseases and the maladies keep getting worse and worse. I thought that when we finally got away from trying to control our problems through regulations and shifted to doing research, that we would solve this greening issue. And we spent $150 million on research and still haven't come to it.
It's incredible, isn't it? What little grove was left after the freeze and what came back is now gone from the greening.
Yeah, it's difficult. I admire the younger generation that's fighting hard to keep the citrus alive, but it's a challenge. So, did your family own a packing house?
We did. Leesburg Fruit Company in Fruitland Park. We bought it in 1952. I was a sophomore in high school, I guess. And my father and three other brothers started that business. They actually started in Leesburg, and then they went to Fruitland Park. So they've been in the citrus packing business for all of my life, really. And my Uncle Emmett, from one of the 9 brothers of the family, from Andersonville, Georgia, came down first, and he was much older and started the business of putting oranges into boxcars. My dad was part of this. He was in Florida doing the buying and putting them in the boxcars. And Emmett was on Spring Street in Atlanta, taking them out, bagging them, and selling them there in Atlanta. And I've heard that story all my life. And when I was growing up, it was a big thing to go to Atlanta and see where my father worked as a young man and all that.
See, they understood from day one that the secret was marketing. You know,
Absolutely.
you could grow it, and a lot of people are good at growing it, but marketing it was
I
the
think that's
secret.
true. Yeah, that's very true.
So the family packing house, did y'all outside buyers? You must have bought most of the fruit to run through the house, or did you grow most of the fruit?
I'd say we bought most of it, frankly. We did buy a lot of fruit. My father did that a lot, and had customers every year he'd buy from the same people. And they'd always get in a big argument about how much it was worth, you know, and they'd settle on the price. And then, but they had a great relationship. And then we'd bring it into the packing house, put it in what we called a coloring room, which was, I think, CO2 primarily from a boiler outside. And that would make it orange when they were still green.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
They used ethylene.
Was it ethylene? I guess it was.
Ethylene would break down the chlorophyll, the
was,
green
yeah.
pigmented colors, and the green, orange that was behind there then was evident. And
Had little canvas walls between the coloring rooms, yeah.
now, how many packing houses, Glenn, were there in Leesburg? I mean, there must have been 6 or 7.
There had to be at least that, Knowles and Cawthon Brothers and some of the other, Bill Floyd. You can probably name more than I can name.
Mr. Peter had one.
Rosedale was certainly part of the Leesburg complex.
Yeah.
And they had activity up there with Blue Goose and Key Scales and quite a few other packers up through there. Fruitland Park.
The Herlong family.
Yes, true.
Parks Williams, who didn't have any children and is gone now. He's long since passed away. He had a Fruitland Park packing house that burned. Gosh, I probably could stretch it and put
I
out
think we're just
another
scratching
couple.
the surface.
That's right.
And so one of the messages that that we want to pass along is that so many residents in Lake County now don't understand or can't conceive of the fact that for 125 years the heart of almost every city in Lake County was the packing house.
Yep.
And the packing house was a perfect industry because they didn't open till after school started. They closed before school was really over. They provided so many second incomes to family because you could be a mom and you could also bring money in from packing and grading fruit. And in the summertime, all the permanent workers were rebuilding field boxes and keeping cleaning the equipment and everything up. And then the income generated from the packing house was what fueled the rest of the city.
Yep.
You know, I'm sure every church in Leesburg was constructed and operated to a large degree on citrus and watermelon dollars.
I'm not sure about that, but I wouldn't be surprised.
So it's you know, and as you dig into this, you find too that there's another secret or another ingredient that I see comes to the surface all the time, and it's the fact that those packing houses that did well and were successful is because that the owners of the packing house treated everybody like it was a family, and it wasn't a matter of I'm working for you. It's a matter that we're working together to get this crop harvested, packed, and off to the market. I'm sure your dad visited the city jail a number of times to help employees out and so forth. It was
I'm not certain about that part, but I am certain about every Friday afternoon he would have time that he would loan the money over the weekend to the employees that needed it for the weekend.
Yeah, it was like a family.
It was,
and
not only the employees, but friends and people that we knew and grew up with during Christmas time in particular. You know, it was busy time at Christmas, and that was when they were on vacation, so they could work in the citrus business and make enough money to get through the next couple of months.
Well, and you know, you appreciate what it was. It wasn't a cushy job. I mean, like you said, pruning trees and that kind of deal. And I've heard about harvesting fruit, off of 40-foot pecking ladders, and that's what you say. But when R.D. Keene closed his business down in Winter Garden, his production man, Fred Saunders, called me and said, "I got a surprise for you." He said, "In the very back of the shop, in the barn back there are some ladders. You probably would like to have them." So I called up caretaker, and we went and picked up 4 38-foot ladders. Mm-hmm. And you can say all you want about it being a 38-foot ladder, but until you see one up close, and then you try to imagine someone climbing that ladder 100 times a day and bringing it down with 70 or 80 pounds of fruit in it.
Hard to believe, isn't it? We had a grandpa tree, we called it, out on the Myrtle Lake area, and it was about 40 feet tall. And that was a big challenge every year, to be sure that the men could get up to the top of the tree and pick the fruit. Most of the trees were not pruned at that time, not hedged or topped. So obviously they were grown to their own natural ability, and quite frequently they'd be 20, 25 feet tall.
Oh yeah, and grapefruit were commonly planted 30 by 30.
Oh.
And so you had room for them to grow. Plus you could get 1,000 boxes to the acre on a good grapefruit grove.
Yeah.
So.
And couldn't give it away then. I remember very, very distinctly my dad talking about maybe we could get 50 cents a box of grapefruit. Now it's $1.50 per grapefruit at the store.
Yeah,
it's quite a change, isn't it?
Yeah, there was a guy in south of Leesburg down at Apshawa Groves.
Where?
Apshawa.
Yeah, I know Apshawa. Yeah.
And Dr. Hoosman was the manager of Apshawa. And he was an economist by profession, but a grove manager is what he really did. Yeah. And Doc was always looking at money and everything else. And I'll never forget when grapefruit went to $1 a box.
Whew.
He said, "Jackson, it's almost like stealing."
That's true.
That's
true.
And I'm sure that you went through some difficult marketing times and how they survived through the Depression. But you're talking about direct marketing to you packing the fruit and hauling it to Atlanta and having Uncle sell it right there. You were practicing what they call vertical integration. You were eliminating a lot of middlemen. And
there was a time in the early 30s, I'm told, I never saw this, where literally, as I said earlier, I think, they'd pour the raw fruit into the boxcar, and it would just be in boxes. I mean, it wouldn't be in boxes, it'd just be fruit. And they'd stack it as high as they thought they could without crushing the fruit. And they would ship that, and then they would unpack it or pack it when they got to Atlanta.
He did that.
Did you?
We did this even late into the 70s and 80s. We had some fruit stores up north, retail stores that we owned. And we would load semis down with bulk fruit. And believe it or not, when we would unload those trailers, there would be very little mashed fruit. In other words, they cushioned themselves in transport, and they generated a great deal of heat to where we didn't even have to heat those trailers. There was, when you'd open the trailer doors, there would be quite a bit of heat from the oranges being close together.
I agree.
And even in bad weather in New Jersey and Pennsylvania, very little freeze damage. Very, 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 very little.
Well, it was then and still is. We're packing fruit, throwing fruit out of the grove into the box, into the car or truck, and it'd be sometimes 5 or 6 feet tall.
Sure.
And I've always been amazed. We were in the citrus concentrate business after the packing house, and they'd haul these big loads of fruit down there and dump them. There'd be no bursted oranges. Bursted oranges.
It was amazing.
So were y'all involved in B&W then?
We were. My dad was a director, and when he passed in 71, I became a director.
Now, was B&W the first juice plant in Lake County, or was Minute Maid at Leesburg?
Oh, I think so. Minute Maid, I believe, preceded us. I'm not sure about Bob Flippo's place in Taveri, Mount Dora, I guess.
No, Golden Gym
was there, I think.
Yeah, but Golden Gym came way after B&W.
Oh, it did? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, B&W started by Mr. Busby and Wilkins in Groveland about 50, I suppose, and they did not do well with it because it was a juice plant. And when for concentrate, and lo and behold, you could squeeze an orange, freeze it, and it would come out good. Was invented by this wonderful team of people and expert in that field. They converted over, and concentrate was then the rage. It was where we put 95% of our fruit, I guess.
Yeah, so y'all shifted from fresh fruit to the juice market.
We still had the fresh fruit market as far as the tourists were concerned, but the vast majority of citrus in Florida was put into concentrate at that time.
Yeah, the McDowell and Atkins and Veldhuis and I forgot the other one, released concentrate, FCOJ, the frozen stuff that you thaw and mix, and people are amazed that you actually had to thaw it out and mix the water. Now we can't do that. That's way too much trouble. Now it comes as not from concentrate. But I guess that started in the late 40s when it really started to generate.
The concentrate?
The concentrate.
I'm not sure of the date. I thought it was a little later than that, but maybe not.
I think 47 was probably the first plant. I think Plymouth was one of the early plants.
Yeah.
But obviously that turned loose the floodgates then for planting. And so all that stuff, especially south of Claremont, I was amazed how little citrus was really south of Claremont before the 50s.
Well, you touched on it a minute ago, and people, my dad used to say it all the time. He said, we found a place to put our fruit, a home. You mentioned marketing and how desperate some years were, and that's very true because you had to sell it. It had to be, you could even concentrate oranges that had been lightly frozen if you got them right away and put them in the juice plant. But of course you couldn't pack them that way. So that allowed enormous openings for the marketing of citrus.
Yeah, there were, and marketing was also enhanced and aggravated at the same time from cold events. And as a citrus grower, if I ask you, do you remember December the 13th, 1962? You know, all of a sudden, all those involved with citrus can remember those events and the impact they had on the trees, and then the after effects that if you had a warm grove, you made a lot of money. If you didn't have a warm grove, you were out of business. And so it's just tremendous ups and downs and anguish and everything else from freezes.
I had just gone to medical school when that happened, and I remember the horrors my family experienced and my wife's family and so forth when that occurred. And then, of course, the huge one was in Christmas Eve of 83, 82, wasn't it?
83.
83. Yeah. And that's when we went out and saw the bark bursting on all the trees, and that was the end of it. That was the end, except I remember, am I rambling too much?
No.
I remember so very well having lunch with Dick Toole, my dear friend, over in Groveland. Everybody gathered at Jack's Barbecue. And Charlie Bradshaw's son, what's his name?
Buster.
What?
Charlie Jr.?
Yeah, Charlie Jr.
Yeah.
That wasn't what they went by, though. Anyway, he was there with his foreman. And he said, well, I've done a long-term study on citrus, talking to both of us. He said, we've found that there'll be no more problems in freezing citrus until another 50 years. And sure enough, 3 years later, in 88, 5 years later, it went to the ground again. That was really the end of it.
Yeah.
That was really the end of it.
Yeah, there were people who had confidence that it was going to come back. I know that R.D. Keene had a bunch of stuff down there, and they pruned all their stuff after 83. And then January of 85, it finished it off. And it was...
Was it 85? I thought it was 88.
No, we had one in 83, December of 83. We had one in January of 85.
That's right.
Then we had a December in 89.
That was the one that was so tragic, the 89, because people
Yeah,
had just planted.
89 is what did a lot of people all in Polk County.
Oof.
We didn't have a lot of acreage replanted. But it's hard for people to imagine that in one night you lost your entire revenue producing ability. Mm-hmm. It's like you wake up one morning and you call your office and they say, Dr. Holloway, I'm sorry to tell you this, but we've been getting calls all day and all your patients have left. They're not coming back anymore. You're what? You know? And how many of these spreadsheets that people in the real estate business were developing looked great until all of a sudden that little line on the top that says income, when it goes to zero, all those numbers in the spreadsheet aren't worth anything. And the sad thing was that the people who really got clobbered were those who had leveraged their groves. The ones who survived were the ones who were very conservative and were not dealing with a large debt service. Like the Simpsons had very little debt on their property. Other growers had leveraged it and they lost everything.
I think that was the reason that my family had always feared debt, that they knew what would happen in case of an event like that. I remember about 1946, there had a big snowstorm in Leesburg, snow in the eaves of houses for 5 days. And we built a snowman. And I remember the night that happened, my dad had a floodlight in his bedroom, his mother. And he turned on the floodlight and woke my sister and me up and said, I just wanted you to see this because it's an event that's going to probably end our citrus business.
Change your life forever.
Why would you wake me up to tell me that? But he did, and fortunately it didn't get cold. It just snowed.
Well, it's been one event after the other as we look at this. Some of the families, are still in the business, and others, have drifted away from it. Your dad wasn't particularly excited that you weren't going to stay in the citrus business, I gather.
Well, it was a mixed feeling. All my life, my dad had said, son, I think medicine is a good thing for you to think about. So I had kind of put it aside, but when I got to Florida, my pre-med years, I did take some agricultural courses and didn't totally commit to medicine until my junior year. But yes, there was some family. I was the only boy in the whole 4-men family. And I remember my Uncle Junior saying one day, well, he's come and dick right around with me a little bit. So I'd do that. He'd do that quite often. And he said, I just want to tell you, you get your medical degree. That's what you ought to do. And so it didn't make my decision, but it certainly was an influence, I suppose.
Yeah, and there's pros and cons. Had a good friend of mine, Nick Farina. He was the guy that discovered or showed that you could elevate micro sprinklers and save trees, and he worked so hard it literally killed him. He died several years ago, but he was really adamant that his 2 children weren't going to get in the citrus business because it was so demanding. And his daughter got a nursing degree from Gainesville, and his son has a master's degree in architecture from Gainesville. And he passed away suddenly, and Lauren, who's working for a plastic surgeon in Tavares, she goes to help Mom, and Brian resigns from the architectural firm in Leesburg, and they're on the farm. And Nick is saying, no. But the young people have found ways to do things differently. They have a retail store. They sell fresh squeezed juice and all this kind of thing. So fortunately,
my wife's family was in that business in Weirsdale, Marion County.
And so you find a way to go and move forward. Emmett Peter Jr. Decided he wasn't going to be in the citrus business. He was going to be a journalist. And so, some families go and some families,
They live down the street from us, I remember, yeah. Well, I suppose it's kind of hokey to say it, but I've still got sand in my shoes. I still do things like that in agriculture and enjoy it very, very much.
Well, one thing that I'm talking to folks and I'm trying to really encourage is the fact that we're putting these signs in the labels, and so we're putting Irish Castle in Leesburg. And so I talked to Steve, and he sends me this beautiful history of their family. Just, fantastic. And then I'm over in Eustis, and I'm putting a sign from the Eichelberger family, who was a big citrus family there, and there are only 2 cousins left in that one generation, and they have nothing.
I don't know.
The only thing I can get on Mr. Eichelberger is from an obituary, you know, out of a paper so many years ago. And so my message to everybody is write, record, tell us, you know, what it was like.
Yeah.
My grandchildren probably are getting tired of me talking a little bit of it, but they're going to reach a point when they'll want to know. It'll be of interest
I
to
think
them.
it's a marvelous thing you're doing, because many times we go through life and don't document, and at the end of our life, nobody really knows what happened.
Yeah,
I think it's a great thing to do.
Well, and I was president of the Florida Citrus Hall of Fame for a number of years, and people would ask me, you know, well, I want to nominate my dad or somebody, you know, and will he get in? And I would say, you know, what you really need to do is you need to nominate this person not because you want them to get into the Hall of Fame, but you need to nominate them because you're going to put together a package that you can share with family for generations to come that will know about them. Yeah. And that's the wonderful thing. Yeah. There are a lot of people nominated for the Hall of Fame that don't get in, but they're telling their story. And that's, I think that's so important. We talked this morning with two guys in Mount Dora, and Tommy Hurlbert and Sam Sadler.
Oh yeah, I know them both.
And so Tommy's grandfather was the general manager of Mount Dora Citrus Growers, a big co-op in Mount Dora that provided most of the jobs, or a big employer and everything else. And of course, Tommy went in a little bit different direction as a motorcycle cop, chief of police, director of public safety, U.S. Marshal. Sam's now a big building contractor. But to hear them talk is like hearing you talk, you know, how, yeah, I toted aluminum pipe. Yeah, I pruned trees. Yeah, I hoed trees. But look at the work ethic that I developed. Look at the appreciation that I have, and look how the family all pulled together. So, you know, it's stories that we need to share, and we need to talk about.
You probably knew my wife Leslie's father-in-law, Keith Scales, who was president of the Florida Citrus Commission for years, and her late husband, Steamboat Scales.
Very well.
Was in the business there after his dad got ill and then passed. And they did the packing there in Wearsdale at a place that they developed from, I guess, the 40s. I don't know when exactly.
And this, you hear stories, but I understand that the railway operator in Wearsdale was one of the highest paid railway offices in the country because the volume of fruit that he handled from G&S Packing.
I didn't know that.
Put him way up.
I don't doubt it.
And Richard Fritch, you know Richard Fritch? Richard Fritch managed to get the table out of the Railway Express officer's office.
Is that right?
And I have that table in Winter Park at the Morse Foundation. Huh. And so Richard says there probably were more boxes of gift fruit that went across, checked off of this table than any other place in the world. And so we're going to put that in, hopefully in a little barn that I want to put up at Claremont, that they have a historic village there. And they've got the railroad depot and the school and everything else. And I'm going to hopefully get a citrus barn there and do some stuff.
I never heard that about the railroad people in Wearsdale, but I'm not surprised, frankly.
Well, huge volume went out by rail there, and I think they got a commission.
It went right by our packing house in Fruitland Park and Parks Williams, and the spur went on through Wearsdale to Ocala, and we were called, it was, I think, after my father passed, and asked me if we ever needed that railroad again. And I said, no, I don't think so. We're not in the business now. And so they took it up. It's gone now, but it's old memories.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the packing houses were built by the railroad.
Sure they were.
Oh, yeah.
That's exactly why they were.
Yeah, they wanted the
Had a
they wa-
spur that went right into the packing house.
They wanted the volume, so you
Absolutely.
build a house and get the volume.
Yeah.
And I assume that that most all of your friends in high school were enjoyed the same privilege that y'all did to get to work in the groves and make some income and have fun and carry on. And
I'm not sure about most, but certainly a lot of them did. And various people had fathers in business that they worked in those businesses during the summer. And I remember one of my great friends and classmates, who I'll never name, fell asleep in the top of an orange tree one time and almost fell out, and I had to laugh at him when he did that. But he didn't hurt himself, thank goodness.
no, you mentioned a little earlier Dick Toole. I have a group I call Mature Mentors.
Yeah.
A number of years ago, a good friend of mine, Dixie Royal, who worked at Golden Gym for years, and he and I would go have lunch all the time, and we'd run across somebody at Lowe's or someplace, and we got to have lunch. You know, you've engaged in those conversations.
Oh, yeah.
So Dixie and I decided, well, we're gonna do something about this. So we made up a list of people we were going to invite to go have lunch with us, and I left it with Dixie. I was doing something, but I came back a couple of weeks later and asked him how he was doing, and he said terrible, because I would call Dick Holloway and he would say, hey, what about Glen Tyre? What about? And so our list of 25 grew to over 100.
Yeah.
And we have a luncheon every year, and we get together, and it's fun. We have a mailing list of about 200 now.
My goodness.
Every year, Dick and Betty would come. Betty would drive Dick. When he lived in Groveland, then we moved to Thomasville. They'd get up early and
Is that right?
drive down to the meeting. Last year was the first meeting that Dick didn't make, and I got a note from Betty that he'd moved into a facility.
Yeah.
And I understand that you guys went fishing quite a bit. And
We did. We were dear friends, and I spoke to him recently, and have done so 3 or 4 times lately. And you're right, they've moved into a facility, and he ain't happy. But he said it's the best we could do under the circumstances, I guess.
Well, I share this line from Dick Toole, and you will appreciate it far more than most people knowing Dick Toole. He was waiting for Betty to come pick him up after one of the meetings. And when he approached me, I said, is Betty coming to get you? He said, yeah, Betty's coming to get me. He says, you know why I love that woman so much? Dick Toole is telling me why he loves Betty so much. I said, no, Dick, why do you love Betty so much? He said, you know, she lets me go fishing and hunting anytime I want to. And you know, I'll never forget that. And you know, and thinking about Dick, and he's just such a flamboyant and interesting and innovative guy. And to appreciate the fact that she wasn't going to nag him about going fishing or anything else. And I thought, Dan, I bet that she didn't have any trouble when he went with Dick Holloway and they were fishing for tuna in the Gulf or over at Mosquito Lagoon after redfish or something like this. But
We went fishing in several of the lakes down his way, our way. And I remember one afternoon, we'd always argue about who sat in the front of the boat, of course, like my dad did. My dad's excuse was, I have to sit in the front so I can see where we're going. Well, it was because he could make the plug go where he wanted it to. But at any rate, I was sitting in the front, and I caught my plug in Dick's cool scalp. And with the barb on it, you couldn't get it out. And I thought he was going to faint. It didn't have that big a deal, but I tried it, I couldn't. So we went up to the hospital in Leesburg and got it out, no problem. But he didn't like that very much.
he never let you forget that.
No, I always sat in the back from then on.
Yeah, well, you know, Dick was quite a guy, and I've learned that most of these citrus production people kind of have areas they gravitate to, and Dick was really just a frustrated ag engineer. He, you know, had the store and everything else, and built that big water gun to wash the fruit off the trees, You know, he was always into.
I was involved with that.
Were you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we had to stop because so much dirt on the fruit.
Oh.
But it worked.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, 500 gallons a minute, and you pretty well knock
Finally
everything.
found enough, the right chemical to lyse the fruit so
Yeah.
that it'd come off easily. But you had to pick them exactly the right time, too. That was one of the disadvantages.
Well, it was, there were a lot of brains working on trying to solve
He's a
that
good
problem.
man, good man.
Yeah, we would have a meeting once a month, and Dick always had some fascinating stories to share.
That's right.
Well, we're gonna dedicate these signs in the end of August, and so you and Leslie need to plan a couple of day trips, and you need to go to Mascot and see the sign down there. Have lunch at the Rainbow Restaurant that hasn't changed in 100 years.
That.
And
Yeah.
They still have collard greens and fried
Do
chicken.
they really? My.
And sadly, Jack's Barbecue has changed.
I know. It's closed, isn't it?
No, it's back open.
Is it back open?
Yeah, and it's become a whatever you call yippies now, the new generation. So it's Smoking Jacks, and they have a bar, and you know, all the hats are gone from the ceiling. And the murals are no longer on the walls, and so it just isn't the same.
1,000 hats in there.
Yeah, and Billy Teal. This is supposed to be your interview, but Billy Teal, who worked for George Howard at Southern Fruit, was in there and gave Benny his hat to hang up on the wall, and then Billy went to work for Heller and so forth. And then when he found out that they'd sold Jack's, he went back in to see if he could get his hat, because every time he went there, he kept saying, I shouldn't have given that hat away. It's the only one I had, only thing I had from working with George Howard. And when they sold it, he asked if he could have his hat. And they said, well, no, when we sold it, the owner has everything, but we'll see what we can do. And Billy said 2 weeks later, the new owner said, yeah, you can come get your hat. So Billy reclaimed his hat that was up on the ceiling there.
Is Jack still alive? Do you know?
Benny is the son.
Benny, that's right.
Yeah, the son. I think he is. And there was more fertilizer and fruit sold at Jack's Barbecue probably than any place else in the state of Florida.
Sure were.
And,
a lot of elections were won right there too.
So it was fabulous. Well, we're going to tell the story, and it's one that I'm excited and learn little tidbits all the time. And I'll share this last one on how you put pieces together. In 1888 or 1889, Mrs. Tom Platt in Eustis wrote a letter to the Department of Agriculture saying that they needed some help growing citrus in Lake County. And so in 1892, the USDA sent 2 scientists to Eustis, Florida, and they met up with a grower there by the name of Frank Savage, and they started a plant improvement program, of which the Orlando Tangelo and Mineola Tangelo and all these resulted. So I'm thinking, well, that was pretty impressive that Mrs. Platt got them to come down. And about a week ago, I get an article from about the Stuyvesant house in Leesburg. Mm-hmm. Dr. Stuyvesant, I guess, was the longtime dentist.
I didn't know, of course, many years before.
But he would be your grandfather's deal. But the old house was finally being torn down, and they had a little history about the growers and so forth, Colonel Lanier and everything else. But in the bottom of it, it says, and another grower, Mr. Tom Platt, U.S. Senator, executor of the Republican Party, blah, blah, blah. So now all of a sudden you say, gee, this just wasn't Mrs. Platt writing a letter. This was the wife of a U.S. Senator who was on the executive committee of the Republican Party. Now I see why the USDA decided to send a couple of people down there, which resulted in the first citrus experiment station ever.
What period of time?
1892.
That long ago. That was the first experimental. Is that a fact?
And it was at Mr. Savage's house, and
When did it go in down by your house, Glenn? All that big on the Plattlacaha Creek?
Now that is the USDA's research farm there, and it was a place that they planted out all the trees.
Yeah.
The research work was done right over here.
It was, that's right. Jack Hearn, you knew Jack,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah. Is that piece of property a park now?
It is.
Yeah.
They've pushed it down, got a beautiful statue up there now. You ought to ride by and look at it.
We'll go by on the way back.
There's a ballet company that owns the property across the street from it. A big deal. Really, many hundreds of kids are training there.
Well, I think that,
I suppose hundreds, I don't know.
yeah, but I think the USDA offered to give that to the city.
I think that's probably right.
And I think the city was extremely reluctant to take it because
Probably.
they were terrified of what an environmental audit might reveal underneath an experiment station.
know that.
You can imagine what kind of chemicals went through that
Oh,
place
my goodness.
as they were being researched. So they
I'm
had
sure
it.
there were a number of them.
But it's been a great trip, and
Could I take this moment
You
to
can do all
show
you-
you a picture of my father?
yeah.
Let me get it, because
I bet I'll recognize it.
I bet you will. He's the one that really deserves to be here, not me, because he was the family leader that started the business there in Leesburg.
He was a patriarch.
along with my Uncle Emmett, and then it's Maurice Jr. and Preacher, they called him. So they all had a big part of it, but Dad sort of started it, I think, more than anybody else, perhaps, other than Emmett. And he was a great man. There's a great deal of difference between intelligence and wisdom, as we all know. He had them both.
Yeah.
And I've been very fortunate to have him as a dad all my life until he passed in '71. Thank you for letting me show
Oh,
that.
fantastic! We want to gather some histories, and so if you feel so inclined, if you want to write up a little bit and that you can share with everybody in our website, that would be fantastic.
I'll try to do that. I'll try to do that.
I'm encouraging folks to do that, and it doesn't have to be much, but things tie in together. And when I was doing this, I have trouble with Glenn. He is extremely shy and doesn't want to say anything.
Not always.
And so he was the one that told me. He said, "We got to go talk to Dick Holloway." He said his family was so instrumental in the Leesburg citrus picture, and
That's kind.
they were one of those families that were the pillars and foundation of the community. And he shared a couple of stories about the two of you, and I think not only did he appreciate your hand-me-down sport coats, I think
We just told that.
Sunday school and BTU and all the rest. Huh?
Your mother would sit ahead of us in the
Right,
next
exactly.
pew in church, and when you'd outgrow a sport coat, Aline would say,
Yeah.
"Ms. Tyre, would Glenn like Dick's sport coat?" Oh yeah. But I'd like to say this about the Holloway family and others in the citrus business. They gave to the community, not only in church activities, but in the city government. They stayed away from management, but they gave their heart to the community. And
That's very kind of you.
that's something today you don't see, that intelligent people that can read a financial statement and can participate with county or city government, sometimes they lack some of that wisdom and knowledge that you were talking about. And your dad was a very important part of the community, and the brothers. I can well remember they were very well known in the watermelon business. Probably the name Holloway was more known in watermelons, maybe, in almost even citrus.
I remember Dad sent the biggest watermelon to Harry Truman in 1948, first one that came out of Lake County.
Yeah.
You're right.
There were two big watermelon, with three, Knowles and Company and Holloway, and B.G. Anderson in Eustis.
Right.
Was real big in watermelon brokerage. And of course, people like Keith Scales, there's no telling what he did for the citrus growers in whole, and he tried to look at the whole picture.
Well, I wish he or his son could be here today because I want to introduce my wife to the film. Leslie, come over here a minute if you would.
Yeah, she can't claim just because she married into the family that she's not a part.
Leslie's
You
been
know what
very-
citrus is all about.
boy.
Oh my, yes, she sure does. And
Lots of late nights.
when you mentioned ups and downs, they know it as well as anybody. They remember the 80 freeze and horror 83.
Yeah, those kind of events were life altering. You know, they were. I'm going to tell a story about Steamboat, and I know that he had a fall grove at the house, and I said, Steamboat, that grove looks great. You got the water on in time and saved your grove. Most people didn't get it on until too late. He said, yeah, let me tell you how that happened. I said, what? He said, Leslie and I were at a party that night. We came home. He said, I decided, I might as well turn this damn thing on now rather than have to wait till tomorrow morning to get it going. He said, by the next morning, he said everything was frozen around him, but the sprinklers in the fall grove were going. So sometimes we stumble onto things and we're successful.
Sure do.
Some of those fall glows are still in that grove.
Yeah.
A lot of them have gone to greening,
Yeah.
that died because of greening, but some of them are still in that grove. And after he died, I replanted with a lot of honeybells. But the fall glows, I always looked forward to the fall glow crop because it was off the tree before it got cold.
Yeah, it was
I love that.
the early ones. Yeah. And that's a product of the USDA breeding lab that started in Eustis in 1892. About a fifth or sixth generation down, so fabulous. Well, and we move forward, and I'm glad that we've captured this interview.
One more little anecdote that's sort of interesting, I think. We've mentioned the freeze of the 80s real many times, and my son and I, he was about 12 or 13 years old, yeah, something like that. We always went, and my late wife Betsy would go over to Leesburg for Christmas Eve and stay with my mother. And we were out in the farm doing something that afternoon, and it was almost shirt sleeve weather. It really was hot. And about 5 o'clock, it began getting quite cold. And by 8 o'clock, it was cold, and the wind started blowing hard out of the north. And we had a little goat or two and a mother and 2 or 3 goats. And they were out there in the pen, and there was a mud puddle there around the feeding trough. And we stopped, and they were all dirty as they could be. And we picked them up, and Michael and I took them home and gave them a bath in the bathtub and kept them in the house that night. And the next morning, that mud puddle was just frozen as solid as ice could get. And that was the morning that turned the citrus industry into the development business.
Yep, it wasn't Disney that changed things in South Florida.
Well, they had an influence on it, but
it was the cold. Yeah.
there were still many, many groves, as you know, and certainly we all remember up through the early 80s, 80, yeah.
Absolutely.
Sure. And your dad, I remember so very well, Glenn.
Oh, you bet. My whole
And
lifetime
mother,
was
too.
geared around freezes,
Oh, my.
Yeah.
In 57, I was in high school. In 62, I was in college. Then 83, I was part owner. And let me tell you what, all those stages changed my life.
Sure they
along
did.
the line.
And what was the lady's name? Had the daughter across the street from you?
Ms. Sanders.
Certainly.
Mabel
Sanders, yeah.
Billy
Dad used to buy his
They
fruit
were
all the
great
time.
people, great
Yeah.
people.
And Billy, her husband, was killed one
Killed
day
right there in
down
his
by a
front
mailbox getting his mail, and the driver ran over him. Horrible. Terrible event.
I want to interject just a little personal story, which you can edit right out.
No.
But my mother-in-law was a Lytle, and her father was Dr. Earl Lytle, who had Wearsdale Packing Company, which burned in 1966, and was right there next to GNS. But anyway, she grew up in the citrus industry. She was in the citrus industry long before her husband, Keith Scales, was in the citrus industry. And so she knew all these families that you all are talking about, and she knew a lot more than any of us probably know. And her husband had died, my father-in-law, and my husband, her third son, had died. And then about 4 years after Steamboat died,
4 or 5.
Dick and I had lunch together, and a little relationship started. And we were planting some pine trees at her house. And I took Dick down there to help us with the planting of the pine trees. She did not know that I was seeing a gentleman.
Mm-hmm.
This would be a shock to her because I'm her daughter-in-law.
Yeah.
And I'm married to her son.
Mm-hmm.
And I took him in the house, and she was barely 5 feet tall. And I took him in the house, and I said, Put, I'd like to introduce you to my friend Dick Holloway. And first of all, her eyes got big as saucers because he's so tall and she was so short. And I said, you know the Holloway family from Leesburg, don't you? And she said, well, of course, everybody knows the Holloway family. So I think she relaxed a little bit when she found out
She was a dear lady.
he was not just a doctor, but from
his
family.
At least he was exposed to citrus. You can't be all bad if you're exposed to citrus.
And the Lytle family, of course, Marion County, but that's a whole nother story.
Yep.
It dates back far. My family came to Leesburg in '29. I guess the Lytles first, Dr. Lytle first came in the 80s, didn't he? 1880?
Yeah, in the 1890s.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Well,
Yeah.
the thing that I'd like to say too about key skills, we all in packing house businesses had some type of secondary income from what we used to call express fruit. It was gift
Sure.
fruit. And it wasn't maybe our main line of production, but it was an important part of it. Where Key combined it all together and set up a marketing plan that was unique. And, you know, from transportation, from production to packing to transportation and mail out orders, he was the leader in the whole industry and respected by everybody.
Yep.
And the thing that was neat about him, again, he was interested in the small grower. He was certainly a spokesman for the industry in its total, but he really looked after the small grower, of which Lake County had, and Marion County had a lot of small growers. And down south they had thousands of acres where we had hundreds
Yep.
or less. Many growers had 20, 30, 40 acres, and that
Right.
was a big production.
My dad used to say you could send a kid to college with a 40-acre grove.
Mm-hmm.
A lot
Yeah,
of them
he
did. A lot of them did.
That's
Well,
And
I've
Steamboat played a big part of that too.
Well, he did.
Oh, yeah,
He did.
big part.
He did all of that, having gotten a degree in engineering when he was in college. He just and then he moved to Weirsdale and learned a lot from Dr. Lytle, but Steamboat got a degree in ag economics. So when you add Key's degree in engineering and Steamboat's degree in ag economics, plus then he went to law school and learned to be a businessman, it was a beautiful combination as long as it lasted.
Sure was.
yeah, Steamboat and Scotty Butler graduated from law school together and never practiced a day in their lives. They
That's
probably
right.
had more impact on the industry from
Yeah.
that perspective.
And I don't know if you know this, but there was those two graduated in the same class from the College of Law at the University of Florida. And it was determined that, I don't remember how many years later, but the highest GPAs in the College of Law came from the College of Agriculture. And I'm not saying it was just those two. Those two were always on the dean's list. But there were others who went on to law school too. And they carried the knowledge and I guess you would say the work ethic that you all have been talking about that farmers have into law school and made the grades.
Yeah, they had two common practices, a work ethic and common sense. And
Yep.
sometimes it's hard to find those two in any one
And both of
individual.
them had a great sense of humor.
Yeah.
Scotty and Steamboat, they had a good time together.
Steamboat and his dad and I were on the board at B&W. Actually, his dad was, and then after he passed, Steamboat and I were on a board at B&W together. So we knew each other, but not real well, but we certainly knew each other. Fine man.
We're going to wrap it up because Gus has got to go to Texas and the weather's getting bad outside.
Oh my goodness. Gus, where are you going?
This is Dallas.
Are you?
Yes, sir.
But I want to thank you for sharing with us. When it's done, it'll be posted on the Florida Citrus Hall of Fame website, and he's really good. It'll be on there within a week or two anyway, and so you can share it. And sometimes, I'm not saying this is going to be the case, but sometimes it turns out to be very, don't know what exactly the word, but about a year and a half ago, I did an interview with Bud Boyer and Rusty Weigel, and that was a scream, and you can imagine. So anyway, but before I did that one, I did one just with Bud, and of course Bud Boyer and Boy Scouts and everything else, and Bud must be related to everybody in Marion County, and so it was a nice 15-minute interview, and then unfortunately, Bud succumbed to COVID, and I sent out a notice and told people, Bud Boyer, but you might not be able to place a name and a face because Bud, if you ask him, he'd tell you, but he wasn't one who would jump up at a meeting and scream. But anyway, so we had about a nice 15-minute interview with Bud that people could go and see and remember him. So there's some other really good interviews on there, some other good people that we've done and so forth. So you'll...
Well, it's been real fun for me to kind of reminisce with you and Glenn.
Yeah.
And thank Gus for being the photographer.
Well, it's been a blast. We'll,
Are you still recording?
Yes, sir.
all right.
Is it cut off?